Everybody here? Okay, we're going to call this meeting back to order. The closed session has just concluded, and there were no actions or votes taken in the executive session. And so the next item on our agenda, and we did actually vote in closed session to seal the minutes of that executive session. So the next item for discussion is the Axon Enterprise Inc. proposal regarding the body camera and taser program. Chief?
Good evening, everyone.
Microphone.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I know I had asked the clerk to forward some materials to the council, so I don't know if you had seen any of that or had that. So, body-worn cameras are something that now is becoming a necessary tool in law enforcement. We were fortunate enough here in Woonsocket. Initially, there were 11 police departments in the state that participated to try and get a federal grant for funding for body-worn cameras. We were one of that group, and we were awarded some money through that. Since then, the state decided that it was important enough through legislature that they were going to also fund a body-worn camera program for all the police departments in the state that wanted to participate for 5 years. So with that being said, our department, along with almost every other police department, there was one police department for a short period of time that did not, and then realized that it was something that the public wanted, even in their community, that needed to participate in this program. So with that being said, we've been awarded $551,250 for 5 years from the state.
I'm sorry, how much was that?
$551,250 from the state for our body-worn camera, which would give us 63, the funding for 63 body-worn cameras. With that, there's administrative costs so it breaks down. They basically gave $1,750 per officer is what it broke down for every police department in the state. And they gave certain departments more body cameras, obviously, because of the size of the department. With that being said, there's 2 or 3 different companies that were out there. Besides Axon, there's Motorola. They have a body camera solution. Frontline has a body camera solution. So does GTAC. Axon, we looked at Axon because Axon, first of all, has been around longest with body-worn cameras. But the advantage that Axon has is Axon also is the producer of tasers, which is another important piece of equipment that we have here at the police department. Currently, we use X26P tasers, which they're all coming of age. With this contract that Axon is offering us, it also marries 63 tasers with the 63 body cameras. And Axon is soup to nuts. They do the training, they do the maintenance. The important thing, or the real expense, is also the cloud software, the storage of the data that's captured on the cameras, the ability to deduct and to screen the camera, to tag it through a CAD system. I could talk about the workings of the systems for as much as an hour. There's a lot involved in it. It's very complicated. One of the key features of having tasers with Axon 2 is that if you take your taser out to deploy it, to use it, it automatically activates your body camera, and it immediately starts. So it's a twofold issue for me. First of all, body cameras are an essential piece of equipment that we need. Taser is probably one of the second most essential pieces of equipment that they have. We all know what the issues throughout the country in use of force and police use of force. The body cameras take away the fact of he said, she said. If there's no one there, well, there's no more he said, she said. This is what happened if the camera's running and it's effective, and it's running from the entire time. There's actual cycle that goes on that you can actually have it go, I believe, up to 2 minutes, but most places I believe they're using 30 seconds. That even if the camera is not on, it's constantly recording. And then when you hit the record button, it begins to then record. So you'd get no audio for that 30 seconds before you hit it, but you would still get 30 seconds of actual video footage of an event that happened before the officer engaged the camera. Part of the state funding, all the police departments involved have to sign, and we are planning to sign, it's a policy on the best practice for the use of the cameras, when to turn them on, when to turn them off, all of those things. That went on for months and months between the Police Chiefs Association, the Attorney General's office, on coming up with a best practice. That's all been washed out and settled out now to the agreement of the police chiefs that it's a good working document. And it's a living working document. Even we know that right now. There's going to be adjustments that'll be made to that because there's more officers. You know, Providence was the only one that had them, and I was involved in their trial period when they were beginning to get them. They were the biggest department that had most in use. Newport had some, but now with the state really going statewide, state police and all the local police departments, everyone's going to be using these. As they're used more frequently, we'll see that there's potential issues and the policy may have to be adjusted. So, so to get back to the funding, the contract, I have 5 years worth of funding that's guaranteed right now. Axon, in their contract, if I sign a 10-year contract with them, they will freeze the current rate of what it is for the entire 10 years, and that's maintenance of the cameras, new cameras every 2.5 years, all different. It's a detailed thing in the executive summary as to how they're going to maintain, but they would maintain both cameras and tasers during all 10 years. With that being said, at any time, knowing that this money is going to run out on that. So we're actually hopeful that the state, again, is going to rejuvenate, give us more money, or the federal government would give us more money. The fail-safe in the Axon contract, they understand that if for whatever reason at the end of year 5 and year 6, if there's no money and the city decides not to engage in money in that, then the second 5 years of the contract are null and void. The second 5 years of the contract are null and void. The thing we would have to do then, though, we would have to negotiate. Even if we didn't want body cameras, we would certainly want tasers, and then we would have to renegotiate with them what the cost would be of to maintain or retain the tasers that we had had. So I think I've covered pretty much most of that, but I'll take certainly any questions that people may have on
Questions?
Council President.
Councilman Canoyer.
So, Chief, if I'm understanding this, just in a nutshell, Axon would be providing tasers and body cameras at a cost of, is that $138,000 and change a year?
Yes.
So, and then on, I think we stand to get $110,000 a year, roughly, 110, 250 from the state, 550.
Yeah, right. 110 up to for body cameras. So I just want to be careful with that.
Okay.
So what it is out of that 138, that's the body camera and taser.
Oh, okay, so we can only use a portion of the state to
Right,
cover a portion of that, yeah.
Which is up to, I believe, $90,000 to cover all the body camera.
Will be covered by the state.
Will be covered by the state.
It doesn't, let me say it differently. The body cameras, the cost of the body cameras does not exceed the 110 a year that the state is offering.
No,
You follow me? The state's gonna give us $551,000 over
Yes,
5 years, so
exactly,
it's
yeah.
$110,000 a year.
right, exactly.
So the cost of the cameras is not gonna exceed that. So we've got the cameras covered.
Yes.
And then you indicate something on here, PSGAO federal request, is that something is that another grant?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's all part of that. That's the bulk of the right now, the only monies that I'm guaranteed is that I'm $110, $250 a year for 5 years, and that's for the body cameras.
Okay.
But by going with the bundling that I'm going with that, tasers are something that I was going to have to be replacing. And even the cost that they're giving us on the body cameras, they reduce the cost on the body cameras because of the fact that we're also doing tasers. So their claim to that is that my savings by bundling is $323,000 over the 10 years.
So, again, just the bottom line is $138,000 a year. We can count on the majority of it, 90-some-odd thousand, related to cameras that will be covered for the first 5 years.
Yes.
So the balance between 90-something and 138, we would have to cover somehow. We have to
Right,
get the funding.
exactly, in budget.
Okay. Okay.
Can we use
Council
the full
President.
110 though? I mean, towards the tasers?
I don't think you can use the full 110 unless you can only use the 110 for cameras.
The cameras and also, but that 110 also allows me to use not only for the cameras itself, but also administrative costs related to the cameras as far as, having someone deduct film, APA requests, all of that. So
Sure.
that's all funded towards the cameras.
But for the 138,
Yep.
it's limited.
Right.
It covers most of it, but there's still a piece that would have to be covered by the city.
Yes.
And I'm just using round numbers that are rough,
Yes,
around 45 to 50,000, we would still have to come up with on an annual basis.
that's correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Council President?
Councilwoman Gonzalez.
So my question was, I know they gave us a discount, on the body cameras, because we were getting the tasers. I wondered if there was a balance of how, from the 110, if we could actually get a discount on the tasers so that we could use more of the 110 towards the body cameras.
This
Is that something
No,
that-
the state has designated their money strictly for the cameras.
Yeah, I get that, but you're getting the discount on the body cameras. But if that amount, whatever's being discounted, if it could be applied from the company towards the tasers, then there would be, from the 110, the cameras would be a little more expensive, but we would have a little bit more funding for that.
But they just package it that way. I know what you're saying. I can't go to them and say, give me more, go up higher on that and go lower on the tasers. That's the way that they've packaged it.
Okay.
Anyone else at the moment? Yes? No? Chief?
Yes.
How many tasers do you generally keep in stock currently?
We've got 60 some now. We actually would like to increase that number to closer to 70. So, I mean,
And
not part of this contract. This would not preclude me from buying, and what they've told me that they would allow me to buy individual tasers if I want to go above that
Well, I guess my point is, some of this can be considered a replacement cost for your ongoing 5-year cycle of taser replacement.
yeah, right, it's going to.
Because they have a 5-year life.
Right.
I'm still not sure why, but they do have a 5-year life. And so you are currently buying some number, whether it's a dozen, 15 tasers
Correct.
every year anyway.
Yes.
Now, will that be cut back?
Yes, it will.
So
Well,
do
it'll
we
be
know,
it'll be
do you know,
basic.
do you know a round number of how much you spend on tasers every year, roughly?
No, I don't, because just what you said, some years if I've got extra money, I'll buy 3. Some years I bought as many as 6. That's one of the things I look at the end of the year. But you're right, I won't have, this will be eliminating, basically what I'm doing is
You're
coming
replacing
into
the cost. You're
yeah,
not
right.
necessarily.
I'm coming into a 10-year replacement. This is basically would be a 10-year replacement plan with
And
the
you
figure
you enhance the performance capabilities by having the linkage between the taser removal to the camera on switch.
Right,
So to
exactly.
speak. So you, and I'm assuming this is one of those tasers that's clearly definitively identifiable as different from your regular holstered weapon.
Yes,
It's colored differently, shaped differently,
yes.
so that it's clear to the person using it where there is a taser versus a gun.
Right now, I'm fortunate enough right now, the majority, I think all, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2, and I may even be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure all of my front line officers have an issued taser and all trained on the taser. Other things that come with this contract, to train master tasers, to people so that you have to have a certification. They're certified once a year on use of the taser. You have to be certified. This contract also gives me the ability to send 5 people to be certified master taser people. That's $10,000 alone. That's not in here. In addition to that, in this contract is training cartridges and different type of cartridges that go along in this. The taser that we're using right now, I said this X26P, which is basically outdated. The taser that we're going to is the Taser 7, which is a newly developed taser that actually now you have the ability to actually fire 2 rounds with it, or manipulate the weapon to fire a round. So it's a much more state-of-the-art group. And for me to get to issue anyone, like if right now this Taser 7 is available, but for me to transition a whole department, it would take me years to do that, other than
Okay,
doing it this
so,
way.
But the current the current taser that's in stock in the department are Axon tasers also? Okay, so the style or familiarity and the function and functionality of the product
Yes.
is essentially the same?
Yes.
Except we're going to gain the benefit of triggering a camera, we're going to gain the benefit of cost replacement, upgrade to a newer model, and we'll time in the cost or limit the cost of replacement to a fixed cost over 10 years as opposed to being subjected to the risk of market price variation and increase over time.
They've told me this current pricing that they've given me is expiring on the 31st of December. They tell me right now, on an average, their pricing is going up 5% a year right now.
Okay.
So at the end of even that, that's one of the reasons to lock into that. In year 6, if we didn't do that, I'd be looking at a 25% increase if we did decide to go forward with it in year 6.
And so is the plan to put this on an agenda for the next meeting?
So, Council President, the one other thing before, yes, that is the idea, but one other thing is that the chief said that the equipment, the hardware that they'll be using both for the cameras and the tasers will always be in working and up-to-date and certified condition. So if we do a 10-year contract, we may be getting different equipment throughout that 10-year contract, but it will be
The newest model?
the newest, exactly.
All right.
And so the plan is, if the council agrees, I'll put forth a resolution authorizing this, and then with your blessing, I will sign the contract. The chief has already assigned it, and we'll move forward for the 10-year contract.
The only information I would ask, if it's retrievable without too much difficulty, is how much we've paid to Axon, say, over the last 5 years for taser replacement and whatever equipment they provide to us. Because whatever that is what we'll be able
Saving.
to say, on average, we are only paying the net differential, excluding the $500,000 for the cameras, because even that's not part of it. So we're talking about $600,000 over time or $700,000 over time, but it's offset by a cost savings associated with not buying upgrades and newer models and not having to deal with
Even the
5-year wear out.
even the cartridges that we use in that, we'll be able to get.
Yeah, if you could, just so that we can know what we're offsetting, because I don't want to go into this making it sound like we're spending $1.3 million, we're going to get $500,000, so we're spending $800,000, because it's not quite that. And we get the benefit of a locked-in price, and we get the benefit of all the newest equipment. So if we could do that, I'd be fine with it.
And who's ever here in year 6, if they don't want to continue with it, they have
Right.
their ability to say no.
But I don't know how you do that when you've got a locked-in price for 5 years during inflationary periods, so.
No, I know. No, it would
I'm-
just be if
I think
they
it's-
wanted to abandon the whole
Yeah,
project for
no,
whatever reason.
Council
I
President?
think it sounds like a good choice.
Councilwoman
Gonzalez.
Thank you. Just making sure that I think another important element, and I know you mentioned it, but is the verbiage on the after 5 years, if we do not receive the funding from the state, that we would be able to be released from the contract if need be.
That's in their contract
Yeah.
language.
I just wanted to make sure that, that's, I know you mentioned it, but I wanted to reiterate that I think that's an important element.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. President,
Councilman Gillette.
just out of curiosity, it was said that the tasers have a 5-year shelf life. Do they actually last longer than that or shorter than that?
Well, some of them, they get bounced around, they do break down, but some of them last longer than that. But the whole idea is, even with any type of technology, 5 years old, is 5 years old. The newer equipment is so much better. We don't throw them away, let's put it that way.
Okay, that's what I was leading to.
Yeah, right.
So I would imagine you have
Still,
some that
if
wouldn't
there's-
last as long either.
Right, and if they're still usable, we'll use them, but this new Taser 7 is heads above the technology of the ones that we're currently using, which the problem is with that is it's not so much even that they break. Well, once they stop, like Taser now has stopped making parts and equipment to replace the current taser that we had. So if something were to break on it, you can't get a replacement part.
Thank you.
One more last question, and I frankly didn't even think to ask, but in acquiring this proposal, is this something that was offered to multiple police departments across the state? Is this associated with the grant? Was there an RFP done at the state level or an MPA done or something?
There was something done on the state level because the state police have signed on to this, Newport has signed this, a number of different police departments. Axon explained to me, I asked them about that.
Could we find out whether the state police went through an RFP process or if the state did a bid process for this? Or if someone did, so that we could be saying that we're riding a state bid or some other agency bids to get this 10-year offer that I would assume is consistent with what other police organizations are being offered as part, and I'm sure they did it aggressively as part of the state deciding that they were going to fund body cameras.
Yeah, they've had Providence even, they've had Providence for
Okay,
years.
if we could just get a tie-in to an MPA or some other municipal bid so that we can justify the resolution with coordination with some other bid process.
We'll include that with the
Yes,
resolution.
that would be good. Thank you. If there's nothing else, is there anything else? All set?
Motion to adjourn?
Entertain a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Canoia, seconded by Councilman Susi. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And so it is 7:02, so we shall begin the regular meeting of the Woonsocket City Council. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilman Canoia,
Here.
Councilwoman Gonzalez,
Here.
Councilman Gillette,
Here.
Councilwoman Sierra,
Here.
Councilman Susi,
Here.
President Ward.
Here. If you'd all please stand for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
God our Father, we ask that you send your blessing upon this city and upon this council. Guide us in our efforts, increase our motivation, and strengthen our resolve to build a better community and ensure a brighter future for the city of Woonsocket. This we ask in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
By the way, I forgot to mention it. Thank you, Chief, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate the information. First item of business agenda for Board of License Commissioners.
22 LC 40, public hearing on 51 applications for renewal of liquor licenses.
Okay, we're going to have a public hearing. Let's open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to discuss any one of the 51 liquor licenses that are on the agenda for this evening? Anyone? Good. Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to close the public
So
hearing.
moved.
Motion by Councilman Canoia.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Gonzalez to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
22 LC 41, application of licenses and renewal of licenses.
Mr. President, I make a motion to approve the following licenses. New license for holiday, also renewals for coin-operated machine, police constable, pool table and billiards, private detective agency, quarterly entertainment, rooming house, victualling class, first class, and victualling second class.
Motion made by Councilman Canoia.
Second.
Councilman Gillette, seconded by Councilman Canoia. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Public comment. Is anyone here to address the council? Please step up to the microphone, identify yourselves, and speak your piece.
I'm a little nervous, so please forgive me. I am Dee Gendron Duchamp. I live in North Smithfield, and I am proud to say that I am the sister of the Mayor Gendron. I had to write this down because I'm very nervous.
Pat Gerard, Dan's sister also.
I never intended to speak at a council meeting, but I can't ignore the disgusting remarks that are being said about my brother and others. I believe in freedom of speech, but not in freedom to lie. The hatred some people have is sad and frustrating to hear. It has spread as far as Warwick and probably even the whole state. There is a side of Dan many of you don't know and probably never cared to see. I have known Dan his whole life since I am older than him, so I know him very well. He has always been a great son, brother, husband, father, and friend. He is a very hard worker, caring, and always there to lend a hand. He has always put Woonsocket first when making any political decisions and has never thought about what is better for him. It's unfortunate that some people only care about destroying someone else, and sadly, these people speak the loudest and will even warp the truth as long as they can spread their own agenda. Dan, don't ever lose your spirit. We all love you, the family. Good luck tomorrow, whatever the outcome is, for Mayor Gendron, Councilman Canoy, Councilman Ward, Councilman Gillette, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I kind of agree with her. I don't want to get into it myself because the things were so upsetting.
Do we have
that,
your name for the record?
Pat Gerard. I had said it, sorry, before. I think Dee says quite all of what we all think. And the thing I remember most about Dan is that when he doesn't know something, he looks up the facts. And that's a big part of this, because even when we were younger, he'd call me, hey, who wrote that song? Or who did this, you know? Or if it was a mathematic question, we'd discuss it. So when he wants to know something, he finds the facts. And I just wish you all luck tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to address the council?
My name is Corey Johnson. Tomorrow's a big day for a lot of you. I wish you guys and everyone the best of luck with whatever the outcome may be. I'm here to talk about property taxes again. I've gone in to look at the system and controls and process that's in place. And what I've found is that a number of important procedures and requirements under Rhode Island general law were missed in the reassessment process. And a key piece of what was missed is allowing for enough time to go through a thoughtful revaluation. The entire time cycle was compressed into a short window. And anytime you have that sort of compression in a process, you get outcomes that are unexpected and sometimes wrong, like is the case with property valuations and the tax process that was recently completed by the city. And I'll explain a couple of pieces where that's happened. And for reference, I'd like to say that I have some qualifications in the fair valuation of assets, including real estate. During the great financial crisis, I was responsible for implementing fair valuation for assets that had no market and no way to determine the valuation. I've been a certified public accountant for a long time, and I've held several FINRA licenses with the SEC, which really addresses the use and of securities and different financial assets. And when I've gone through the valuations, there's a couple of things that came out that are wrong, and it's clear that there's bias in the outcomes. And I'll give examples of where it is. The valuation of large multifamily assets, those owned by true institutional investors, went up nominally relative to the valuation of other multifamily assets year over year. And part of that is driven by the owners of challenge assessments. That same sort of bias is observable in the outcome of true commercial property that's in the city of Woonsocket. And those valuations have been understated in the assessment. The third place where there's bias, and it's probably more nominal than in the first two categories I spoke about, is an understatement in valuations of single-family properties in the city. And it's hard for an outsider who hasn't worked in valuation for a long time to see it. But as someone who's a mechanic of those processes and has been involved in thousands of them, it's clear as day to me that that outcome has happened. And what does it mean for the city? Woonsocket, 63% of the city's population are renters. On average, the income of the city is below the median income of America. Almost all renters in Woonsocket cannot afford an unexpected expense of $400 or more. The property tax assessment outcome pushed a $3 million burden onto the renters of Woonsocket, which is in the process of being transmitted to them through rents. In looking at the documentation that exists with the city and the discussion that was made publicly around this topic, that impact was clearly missed. It's not an impact that's equitable in any way. And I would ask that the council and the city take a hard look at it and think seriously about how it can relook at its policies around equity in housing and stability in its policies so that it doesn't cause these burden shifts to folks unknowingly in the future.
Thank you.
Council President?
Thank you. Mayor.
Thank you. If I could just say, for the public's knowledge, Mr. Johnson has been working with, or trying to work with, different people in the administration to try and get to the root of what the problem is. Unfortunately, not having a full-time tax assessor has created an unnecessary burden, and I know there was one day when Mr. Johnson arrived at City Hall expecting to have an appointment with the tax assessor, that the tax assessor was not here. So he ultimately wasted his time coming there to try and get the answers. Mr. Johnson has been offering his services, and I don't mean that in a financial way. He's been offering his assistance, his help, to try and find out what the problem is with the inequities that happen during revaluation. And it's been difficult because we haven't been able to give him answers because of a lack of employees that participated in the revaluation process are not available to us right now as they were through the revaluation process. So I want to thank Mr. Johnson and let him know that as things come together, I will absolutely, along with the administration, finance director, we will give him whatever resources we can put together because it has not been easy, and he has been willing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to address the council?
That would, excuse me, that would be me, Rhonda Sharon, Park Avenue. I thought this was a line for the chicken pies. I have two things to talk about tonight. The first thing is I went to the tax assessor's office this week because I have my property revaluation, and they gave me the worksheet. And I'm not an expert on this, but I do know that I don't have oil heat in either one of my houses. So I don't know how many times that they've assessed my house that there's oil heat, but there isn't. So there's definitely some errors in my assessment. I couldn't get anybody to explain to me. I have a unique property because I have a two-family and I have a single family on the same lot. My house went from $243,000 to $500,000. The girl down in the office said, well, that's because you have two houses. And I said, okay, if I have two houses, then do I get the homestead exemption on my single-family house? She said, no, you have a three-family. And so it went back and forth a couple times. So this is going to be, I'm probably going to see a lot of you. I hope I'm going to see a lot. So anyway, there's my story on the tax thing. So I'd love to talk to this young man. The second thing I'd like to talk about is tomorrow. I wish Jim, John, Roger, and Dan, I wish you guys a lot of luck. I'm saying prayers for you. But I'm saying huge prayers for us that Denise gets into office. I'm praying for you to be city council. And if God's hearing any of our prayers, Mayor, we're really hoping. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ron Nichols, 48 Norman Street, Woonsocket. This is such a party. To my left, I have no use for either one of yous. Mr. Susi has not said anything in 2 years. I've watched council meetings, YouTube. Ms. Gonzalez, I talked to you this week. I told you exactly how I felt. And ironically, I had your time for a moment, and then Lisa happened to pop up behind my shoulder with two people. Oh, excuse me. And I said to her, my time was not valuable? I'm not good enough for you? It's exactly how it went down. Oh, you can shake your head. It's exactly what you did say, excuse me. You did say that, I'll give you that. But this is what I see. For 2 years, I'm not happy. You're paying for my time, my tax dollars, and I get nothing in return. So saying this, the next one to the gentleman to my right that's on the radio this morning, and he went after this council. Be careful what you wish for. 2 years ago, he went after John Brian, election morning. Ripped him apart. So if you want integrity, don't go there. You want honesty, don't go there. This is what you see, and I told you before. Dan, you're the best of the best. And I call it just the way I see it. So good luck to everyone.
Thank you.
My name is Charles Lemoyne. I live at 174 St. Barnaby Street, Woonsocket, Rhode Island. I hope, Dan, you get in. I hope Roger, John Ward, and Jim Canoia gets in too. As far as the other two, well, Mr. Susi only talks when he wants to, and a lot of times he doesn't talk into the mic, so that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to address the council?
Estelle Bubble, 648 3rd Avenue, Woonsocket. I've been saying my prayers, and you guys all know this. I wish you all luck. Jim Canoia, John Ward, Denise Sierra as a write-in for mayor and city council, and Roger Gillette and Dan Gendron. We need you. We really do need you. And I've been passing out the words, and I already voted because I'm working the polls. But I do wish everyone, please, we can't lose any of them. You are our hope for the future here in the city, because you always do your research, and you always reach out to us. So God bless, and keep your chins up.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chris Beauchamp, 37 Meadow Road, Woonsocket. I wish everybody luck tomorrow, every candidate that's running. What we don't need, and if I'm lucky enough to get elected again, is snide comments like I just heard. Chicken pot pie line. That's what we don't need up here. We need people to be respectful. And your comments, you're entitled to them. But I got elected 5 years, 5 terms. So I must have some integrity, some respect, and some honesty. Because I was elected for 5 terms on the city council from 2007 to 18. And the reason why I didn't come back in 2018 was because of their lack of respect on a certain council person. And I won't name any names. Because I'm not going to waste my time, if I get elected, arguing. I'm going to do like Jim Canoia says. I'm going to have the facts. I'm going to do what I think is right for the city of Woonsocket. And as I said this morning on the radio,
RFPs that go out, requests for proposals. It says what's in the best interest of the city. And that's what I plan to do if I'm elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to address the council? I think we've covered everybody in the room. Okay. Enough public comment. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Make a motion to accept all items in the consent agenda as submitted.
No exceptions?
No exceptions.
Okay.
I'll second
Motion to
that.
move all items on the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilman Canoia, seconded by Councilman Susi. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next item, minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Canoia, seconded by, where'd it come from?
Sierra.
Councilwoman Sierra. Any discussion on the minutes, corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And the minutes as submitted for meetings held on October the 12th, 24th, 26th, and the regular meeting held on the 17th of 2022 are approved as submitted. Presentation of petitions, memorials, and remonstrances.
22P41, request of Councilman Gillette to address the following item. Respond to comments made under public comment at the October 17, 2022 City Council meeting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'd like to say first that regardless of whether you come up to the microphone under Citizens Good and Welfare and you're talking nice things about the council, bad things about the council, it's our job to listen to you. And when people come up, the last council meeting, it was a bit tough for us, but on the most part, we kept our cool and paid respect to every single person that spoke. There were some things that were said that I've had some time to think about. Like, for instance, there was one gentleman who listed a slew of items that the mayor got accomplished since she's been sitting as mayor of the city of Woonsocket. Excuse me. And that gentleman was totally correct. She did get all of those things done. What he neglected to mention was that she couldn't have gotten one of those things done had the council not agreed on providing the finances behind each and every single project that the mayor was able to get accomplished. On the same token, the city council voted on a piece of legislation pertaining to the possibility of a $500 million project in the canal area, the bypass area. And as it stands right now, we didn't get any cooperation from the last mayor. We haven't gotten any from the current mayor either, come to think of it. Well, you agreed it when you were on a council, not as mayor. But joking around there. Here's a potential project that, like I said, could bring close to $500 million in what's the word I'm looking for, in construction, and completely change the face of the city of Woonsocket. That, I said on the radio earlier today, I said to John Dion, I said, John, you could be my worst enemy. You come out with a project like that, I'm going to make you my best friend, because this is going to be good for the city of Woonsocket. It needs to be looked at seriously. And hopefully, once we get the presentation done, the next council and the next mayor will do that, because the city's stake, the city needs that kind of project in order to activate itself and, just make things better for the taxpayers and all of the citizens that live in the city of Woonsocket. Hopefully that's going to happen. We had another citizen that came and spoke on the citizens' good and welfare that stated, that he hoped that the five of us, well, four because one wasn't running, but four of us would not get reelected, and gave what seemed to be an opinion that he actually meant, and he meant it. That troubled me from the time that he said it, and I went home, and it's been on my mind ever since. After he got through talking, a group of people clapped their hands and cheered. And I said to myself, what on earth is going on in this community? Do we want to be a community that is lawless? We have a city charter that every single elected official, whether it be the mayor, the city council, or school committee, has to follow, because we took an oath of office. And on the most part, I believe that we've been doing that. The unfortunate incident of the mayor being removed was not the fault of the city council. It was the fault of the mayor for breaking the law. If the city council did not do its job per the law, then we don't deserve to be up here. And we did it, and we were chastised in a way that I'm not going to say offended me. I can't talk for the others, but I was very disappointed, and to this moment, I still don't understand why this gentleman actually feels as strong as he does. I haven't had the opportunity to talk to him, so I guess that question will be in my mind forever. But I will say this. If I am elected once again, I'm going to take my oath of office, and I'm going to abide by that oath of office. So if you don't want me to abide by that law, that I take the oath seriously. Thank you. I think I'm done.
Thank you. 22P42, request of Councilman Canoy to address the following items. 1, fiscal year 2023 tax assessments and tax bills.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So I'll be a little bit briefer than I anticipated because Mr. Johnston, I didn't realize he was going to be here this evening, and he covered some of the points. But as you recall, on September 12th, the meeting was September 12th, we had a parade of folks that came to the city council and expressed varying degrees of concern and perhaps outrage over their tax bills, because the tax bills had just gone out just a few days prior. And at the time, we said, and I know I said, I want to look at the data, and I mentioned to the finance director that I would like the data so we can look at this stuff and understand what happened. And in fact, the very next day, on September 13th, at 9:47 in the morning, I did send an email to the finance director, which said, "Good morning, Chris. As discussed last night, please provide me in Excel format all the property tax data. Specifically, I want a file that provides at least the following: property address, property class, single family, 2-family, 3-family, commercial, etc., the current assessment, the prior assessment, any exemptions such as homestead, etc. Thanks, Jim." And I sent that again the very next morning, as I indicated I would on the night prior. And then I believe Councilwoman Gonzalez also sent a request asking for information. And then on September 23rd, the finance director sent us a file. Two separate files, one with the 2022 data and one with the last year's, the 2021 data. So two separate Excel files with, thousands and thousands of lines of data. And the finance director sent it to all of us and said, "Good morning. This is the attached information. Elise, the part-time tax assessor, is merging the two spreadsheets for easier comparison, and I'll forward it along to you once I receive it, Chris." So that was on September 23rd. So you haven't received that? No. So today's November 7th, and you still haven't received it. I also had a conversation when this first came out, days after my request, and I spoke to Elise, and she was going to provide that. Never happened. So, but nonetheless, I did grind through the spreadsheets, the two of them, and I did combine them, and I'll concur with Mr. Johnson's assessment that there was a significant movement on the assessed values, and therefore the tax levies, a shift, heavily concentrated in the multifamilies, 2s, 3s, and then obviously the 4s through whatever, not the large ones as he indicated, but the 4, 5, 6 families. And just to kind of give you a quick, and I'm not going to go through much of this in detail, but single-family homes, their assessed value went up 57%. So their assessment, the median household, the median, the average single-family was assessed last year about $176,000, and it climbed to $276,000. So it was a 57% increase. The 2s, 3s, and 4s, owner-occupied, went up 91%. So the single-family assessments went up 57%. The 2s, 3s, and 4s, the multis, if you will, owner-occupied, went up 91%, significantly higher in terms of the overall movement. Then there was another group combination, which are the ones with the storefront on the bottom, and then 4 or 5 units above. They went up a mere 282% year over year on their assessed value. Those are taxed at the commercial rate. So long story short, just on the assessment side, forget the tax side, just on the assessment side, the single families went up 57% roughly on average. These multifamilies went up 91%, 282%, et cetera. But then when you get to the actual tax, the average tax on a single-family home, and I'm a single-family property owner, as some of my colleagues up here, on average, our tax bill went down 7%. So we saw a decrease in our tax bill. Whereas the 2s, 3s, and 4s owner-occupied, this is before the homestead, I might add. This is just the gross tax. Their taxes went up 12%. So the singles went down 7% before homestead, and the two families went up. The 2s, 3s, and 4s went up 12%. The combinations, which I just referred to, they went up almost doubled. They went up 165, 170%. So it's stuff like that. So again, this is just saying a lot of what Mr. Johnson already talked about, and I've spoken to him previously. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a timeline here. He mentioned some compressed timelines. So just so people know and understand, the City Council received the budgets pursuant to the charter. Remember that pesky thing called the charter? Well, we received the budgets from the administration on Friday, May 13th, okay? The afternoon of Friday, May 13th. However, here's what it said. Attached is the proposed budget book. The levy page is not included, but will provide as soon as possible. So I just want people to know and understand that the folks up here, the City Council, received the budgets on May 13th, Friday, May 13th, Friday the 13th, but there was no levy information. We did not have the tax levy information, okay? They said they'd provide it when they got it. So when did we get it? We got the levy page, the total, not all the details, but just the total levy, a couple weeks later on Friday, May 27th. So we didn't get any levy information to look at and think about until Friday, May 27th. And oh, by the way, there was a public hearing scheduled for May 31st, because you have to have a public hearing on the budget prior to June 1st. So that meeting was scheduled and advertised for May 31st. We didn't receive the levy information until the Friday prior to that meeting, which means the public didn't receive it either, okay? So we had a public hearing on May 31st, and then the next regular meeting where we could take this up was June 6th. And we tabled the budget. And I'll remind you all, there was a press release from the former mayor that criticized the city council on August 30th. She criticized the city council for tabling the budget on June 6th. That was one of the reasons the, quote, bills were late, because the city council had the temerity to table the budget passage on June 6th after having received information just days in advance. Oh, the horror. So if you look out on the city website, you'll see the proposed budget, and at some point, Chris will have to have the adopted budget, and I know you're busy and you're down at least one or two people in your department that don't come to work anymore, but if you look at that proposed budget, and I didn't notice this until just recently, and I would ask you to update it, the mayor's budget message that's in our book is not on the city website. So if you look at the proposed budget, it doesn't include the mayor's message here, her the former mayor's six-page message. And I only say that because, again, that pesky thing called the charter, the mayor to submit a budget, the mayor shall file with the clerk at least 50 days prior to the beginning of the fiscal year a proposed operating budget and capital budget containing an explanation of proposed financial policies and important features of the budget plan. So that message needs to be out there because I don't think people have access to it.
Okay.
Yeah, and as I indicated before, unfortunately, the message did talk about the increases in assessed values. The mayor did highlight, the former mayor highlighted, the median single home of Woonsocket for fiscal year 23 is now at 275, up from last year's 174, and that's a good thing. And unfortunately, we were never provided similar information or similar verbiage or data or anything else or any indication as to what happened on the multifamily side. So I think we got lulled into a sense of kind of a rising tide raises all ships equally. That was clearly not the case. So my message here is, two things. Number one, understand that the city council did not receive the information until very late in the process, number one, and we had deadlines to have hearings, and we had deadlines to pass a budget for a new fiscal year. Number two, it's November 7th, and we still don't have the information we asked for on September 13th. We have some of it, but it's not delivered as we were promised and so forth. And I don't know if my colleague, Councilwoman Gonzalez, has any information on the stuff that she received, but yeah, so there's no good answers here, and Councilman Ward addressed this previously. Unfortunately, there are no good answers for this fiscal year because, like it or not, the tax bills went out, the tax levy was certified, mortgage companies have received the bills, they're paying, etc. So this is going to have to be something that gets fixed clearly for the next fiscal year, absent any appeals that are going on and so forth. That's a separate track. But in terms of changing the levy for this year, and I said that right from the beginning to anybody I spoke to, we're going to look at this, we're going to figure out what happened, and figure out what we can do, but there is no good fix for this year. And unfortunately, if we had this data, there were levers to pull. We could have made adjustments on the tax rates. We did adjust the tax rates a little bit. We took the commercial rate down, we took the residential down, but frankly, we should have taken the commercial down even more for the multifamilies. Or what we could have done, we had levers to pull with respect to the homestead exemptions. But again, we were never provided the information that would have allowed us to make that analysis. There was no analysis done that I'm aware of on the administration side, and there was certainly nothing shared with the council, and unfortunately, we are where we are. So my message here is, I do wish everybody, and I sincerely mean this, I wish everybody that's running for office the best of luck. The chips will fall where they may. I'm comfortable with whatever the outcome is. Trust me, I could it's gonna neither make nor break my day. And I know there's a lot of vitriol out there, and hopefully tomorrow that's behind us and people dust themselves off and move on with their days. But I will tell you, who's ever up here, there's some work to be done. Some serious work to be done in connection with the tax valuations and what Mr. Johnston very articulately referred to. And trust me when I tell you this, he is more than qualified to make some of the assertions and the assessments he has made. He is a very self-depreciating individual, but trust me, his qualifications are sterling. So look, I won't go on anymore, but I will tell you there's work to be done, and this has to get resolved. It's November. We're going to be going into December. This stuff has to be sorted out, and there's going to be some decisions made on next year's assessments and or homesteads, rates, etc. So the point is, there's an issue here. It needs to be addressed, and we are also going to need, as you indicated, the administration is going to have to play a role here. And Chris, I know you've done your best, and you're limited with what you can do in terms of your staffing situation. But anyways, second thing I want to address just briefly is, bear with me, the Oak Grove issue. So I know we talked about this previously, and I'll ask, it's really for Director DeBrois. Have we done, is there any movement on that at this point? In terms of the, go ahead.
So, just to keep you up to speed, I reached out to the developer, the engineering department did, and I demanded that he make some alterations by the end of October, which he did, just so we could plow the...
Did he do the asphalt feathering?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he feathered it in.
Yep.
And just last week, we reached out and we said, what's the story with the granite curb? When? He still has not received a confirmation date from the company supplying the curb.
Yeah.
So
here's my view of the world, and I'd be happy to be corrected or otherwise, but it's two things. One, we have a bond of roughly $178,000 outstanding. Agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, about $178,000. And that was reduced from $498,000 down to $178,000 back in roughly June of 2020, 2.5 years ago. And at the time it got reduced, the estimated cost of what they had to do was around $178,000. That's how they came up with the $178,000. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
Yeah. So between now and then, I think we'd all agree we've had significant inflation. So my concern is, I'm not convinced that the $178,000 is going to be enough to cover the work that needs to be done, because again, the estimate at the time when we allowed, and I don't know why the planning board did this, but it is what it is. We had a $498,000 bond. They've completed certain aspects of it. We allowed them to reduce it to $178,000 based on an estimate of, this is the work that has to be done. It's going to cost roughly $178,000. So we reduced it. Here we are 2.5 years later. I guarantee you that $178,000 isn't going to be enough to do what they have to do. But it is what it is. The bigger issue is, my view is, I think, Mike, that we should basically tell the developer, we're going to pull the bond if you don't provide to us in the next 10 days evidence that you've actually put an order in for the granite. I want to see a valid, and you may have already done this, so forgive me, but I want to see, I think we should demand, give us a valid copy of a valid purchase order. Because I'm not sure he's even ordered this stuff. Maybe he has. Maybe he hasn't. But at some point, we can't just keep waiting around for people to do what they say they're going to do and they haven't done. As far as my understanding is that all the COs have been issued. And the other concern I have is, and I'll ask you, Mike, if you don't mind, tomorrow, for under the bond, it talks about the improvements associated, whatever, with Phase 3, Oakland Grove, whatever the language is. I'm going to ask you tomorrow, if you don't mind, just to give me, I'd like to know exactly what those improvements entail, because I thought there was an element of this for the retention pond for that area. And it doesn't look like, from what I saw, when we reduced it from 498 down to 178, it didn't reference the retention pond. It just talked about the road, some trees, some this, some that. So I will ask you, again, the bond refers to, quote, improvements in connection with Oak Grove Development Phase 3, Woonsocket, Rhode Island. So somewhere those improvements, somewhere that's defined. That's defined presumably by the planning board, whatever conditions they put in. So I will ask you tomorrow, I'll follow up with you. But if, obviously you should talk to the solicitor, but I'm just suggesting at some point we stop playing patty cake, so to speak, and tell the guy, look, we're going to pull the bond, we're going to do it ourselves, and I know he's litigious and all that stuff, but so be it. If we have to, we'll pull the bond and do it ourselves, unless you can show us, you pick the time, 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever, that you have a valid purchase order for the granite, because I'm not convinced that, the granite there's a lead time on the granite, but if you don't order it, you never get in the queue. So do we know if he's actually ordered it? Do we have any? No. So, and that's the issue.
No, the piece that puzzles me, and quite frankly, I think there's some BS going on, but is another development just down the road a little bit, ordered granite curb, and
it's sitting
has
there
it on site.
It's sitting there, ready to go.
Yeah, so, is this one dipped in gold, or?
Yeah.
You know
So
what I'm saying?
that's you're making my point exactly, Steve, Director, sorry. Is we got to stop playing around here. And at the end of the day, that's what these bonds are for. And frankly, the leverage we have is if we pull that bond, he's going to have a heck of a time trying to do a development ever again, because he'll never be able to get a bond. That's how that stuff works. These bonds, letters of credit, et cetera, they're issued by insurance companies. David knows this. They're issued by insurance companies or banks with the expectation that they'll never be drawn. They're just a security. And the minute you get drawn, you are persona non grata, so to speak. So the point is, everything's been done. It appears he's not living up to his end of the bargain unless he can prove to us that he's actually ordered the granite and there's an actual legitimate purchase order.
Right.
Then my view is we say, thank you very much. We're going to draw down the bond. We'll make the order. We'll do what we have to do. And if he wants to jump up and down, he can jump up and down. But obviously subject to conversation with the solicitor.
I think I'll have the engineering department ask for Mike's not the right person.
Yep.
Mike has suffered some major bruises and scars here.
No, I understand.
He's been threatened and...
Yeah.
Seriously.
No, I know that.
So,
I know.
So I'll have somebody else do it.
Yep. I just want to know...
I'll get a communication to him, telling him that we want a PO or we want some communication.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're just going to... We'll be talking about this in 6 months. I guarantee you.
I agree.
So, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks, Mike.
22P43, request of President Ward to address the following items. 1, Oak Grove unfinished roadway and curbing.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And actually, there is something to continue on because I took a ride through there this afternoon. And I noticed the feathering on the utility covers. It's a little bit steep to my view of it, but it's there in any case. And if I may suggest, because as people drive through there, they may want to see it. If somebody could take some of that reflective yellow paint in a can and just sort of put a circle around the cover so as they see this slope coming into them, they can know to avoid it. Shouldn't be a major undertaking. The other thing I do want to say that relieves a little bit of the pressure here is the last time I had driven out there, it was not evident where the stormwater drains were. When I went out there today, the stormwater drains are clear. There's paving around them. that shows them, and the important one down at the bottom of the slope at the lowest elevation is wide open and actually has a pitch into it so that any rainwater, if it doesn't fall off at the top and actually makes its way down the street, has several places for it to go. So that should prevent the risk of the severe flooding they've had in the past. And so that's a good thing. It's not the solution, it's not the way that's supposed to be finished, but it, I think at least will relieve some of the pressure coming from any kind of rainstorms and where the water will travel to. But I agree with Councilman Canoyer, if the developer's making no other efforts, then we need to put pressure. And just as I would say, the only other thing is if we could just put a yellow marking around that so that people can see it and it's visible to them as they're traveling through. The next item I had was the timing of quarterly payments for taxes and utilities. The sewer bills went out. I know I just paid mine, and it has quarterly choice on it. The question I raised, and I sent an email out to the law department. I didn't include the finance department because I noticed that the interest rate on that bill was 18%. And I know for taxes, we actively, through our ordinance for the appropriations, set the percentage down to 10% intentionally. But I went looking for where we set the rate of interest on water and sewer bills. And I checked the Code of Ordinances. There's nothing there. And I checked the ordinance that approves the budget for the water and sewer departments, and there's nothing within them setting the rate. And so I'm wondering, and I don't know that anyone has an answer here tonight, but it's in my mind wondering who set the rates, when, where did they codify it, if ever? Why is it 18? I mean, I'm assuming it's 18% because taxes were 18%, but we lowered tax interest rate to 10%. Those didn't match it, and I don't know whether they should or they shouldn't. It's just that I don't see anywhere in our records where somebody actually made a decision about setting that rate.
We will check tomorrow. I don't think, Director,
Again,
do you have
as I
that
said,
answer?
My request went to the law department. It didn't go to finance. And I sent it to the law department because I would have thought it would have been in the Code of Ordinances or in something
that
in
may
the
have been the right direction, but either way, we'll check on Wednesday and see if we can figure out if not what the problem is, and if it is something set by ordinance, we'll simply submit an ordinance for the next meeting to.
And the other reason I'm concerned is because with the delay in receiving a water bill, there are going to be people who, and I know we should all be saving up our pennies to be ready when that bill comes, but at the time the estimate came, it was said when the next one comes, you'll be getting an actual, and I know that's not happening, but when it does come, it means people are going to be getting a much larger bill, and it will put a strain on them. And if their delayed payments are affected by an 18% interest rate and we don't actually have a record of why that's set, I think the council and the administration needs to look at, once we know that bill's going out, what we're going to set as the timetable for collection period, and whether or not we're going to stick to an 18% rate on late payments, because under the circumstances, I don't know, I really can't speak for what I think may be considered fair and equitable to the people who have to pay these bills, but I think being that they may be significant, we need to have that discussion before that stamp gets put on the envelope and the mail goes out. So that's all I want to talk about.
So, Council President, I think what we've discussed is when the bills go out, we may not have, even if the interest rate is set by ordinance, we may not have the time, hopefully we don't have the time to adjust the interest rate before the water bills go out. So,
and I think that's where it becomes important to set the time frame for
exactly,
collection
and
to make it reasonable for people.
We've talked about making it a longer period of a grace period to give people time, because it will be more than 2 quarters when the bill finally comes out. It will be the water consumption for over 2 quarters. So it can be significant for many people.
Very good. Thank you. The next item I had on my list was animal shelter costs and location matters. And I bring it up because I had gone out to look at our animal shelter currently that's not in use and did a comparison with the mayor to a view of the animal shelter in Lincoln and looked at costs associated with it. But one of the important features in the discussion was the discussion that we had with the director, D'Agostino, at the last meeting, where a reporter from the Journal was there, and even the reporter picked up on this after we had these lengthy discussions about possibilities, and he is quoted as saying, "Far be it from me to be a pessimist, but I am. I would hate to see any money spent only for something else to come in and say we're not going there. You know what I'm saying." And as the reporter said, we do know what you were saying, that someone else would be the former Mayor Lisa Baldelli Hunt. And the implication, as I said, the implication in your statement is someone already has a plan. And I think we have knowledge of that plan, and it has to do with citing the animal shelter at the concession stand that's only had limited operation over at River's Edge Park. And the question that has arisen was the fact that the park is generally closed from December 1st to April 1st because there was no means to reasonably expect to pave the road to get into the park, and so it was effectively unused. However, at the meeting, the director pointed out the possibility that there may be a chance to get permission or do whatever's necessary to be able to pave the roadway section that goes into the park in order that it be able to be plowed in the winter and therefore make the property accessible year-round. And so I don't know what the cost of that would be, except that in measuring out the amount of distance from where the pavement ends to where the concession stand is 1,900 feet. I thought it was about 1,000, but it's actually 1,900 feet of paving, and I don't know what cost would be associated with that. And I guess at some point we could learn what that cost might be. But as to the building itself, and the fact that the building at the concession stand, I believe, measured out to about 1,100 square feet. Our current shelter is just a little over 1,000 square feet of space, and to my mind, when I visited that space, it was extremely small, undersized, because it really doesn't have sufficient space and separated space for cats to be brought in and other animals without going right by the dogs and doing many things that are sort of in a mess in terms of process. However, in Lincoln, the shelter that's there and exists is 2,450 square feet. And they actually spoke about and planned for the possibility of adding a 650 square foot addition, although in looking at the building, it is sufficient to the purpose. The point is here, though, that in 2018, they had to go out to bid for a complete renovation, which basically meant stripping out everything except the block walls and redesigning, replacing all of the materials for the cages, replacing all the materials, and putting new coating on the floor, putting a new drainage system in for the animal waste, and essentially changing out the entire HVAC system and plumbing system in order to make it a modern, usable animal shelter. That bid back then, in 2018, was the winning bid. The low bidder was $250,000. The total billings ended up at $259,791. Here's the kicker. This contractor didn't have to do the HVAC system and the plumbing work because a contractor, very generous contractor, company by the name of Bruno, was a resident of Lincoln and wanted to contribute to the town, and they did it in this way by offering free of charge the complete work for the HVAC system and plumbing. And he estimated that cost for that portion of the work at $92,000, which means the cost to renovate that building at 2,400 square feet was $342,000. 2,400 square feet. 1,200 square feet, I don't believe is adequately sized to put an animal shelter, which means, to my mind, you would need an addition. Even if you brought it up 2,000 square feet, or even 1,800 square feet, you're talking about a 600, 650 square foot addition, which, coincidentally, the town of Lincoln went to bid for, and didn't go to bid, because the estimates to do a 650 square foot addition, and I know estimates like these are always on the high end, but to do it, not including the design work for a simple 650 square feet, was over $300,000 as estimated by an engineering or an architectural firm by the name of Keough, and they didn't go forward with that. So we're talking a space that probably, when it's all said and done, will require the cost of paving and whatever that entails with the current rock base that's there, combined with the cost, I'm sure, of $500,000 that should have to be identified if we're going to move an animal shelter into Rivers Edge Park and have it as a year-round facility. And I say this only because, as the director pointed out, the plan's made. It doesn't appear to be open for discussion. It doesn't appear to be open for debate. I guess it falls into the my way or the highway description. So I just thought I'd give you a sense of what it's going to cost the city to try to do a facility there if it's to be done properly. And I'm speculating, but I think a reasonable number, maybe an optimistic number, is $500,000. Just putting it out there as something that I'm sensing through all of this. My next item for discussion was a public safety facility and the possible use of All Saints property and the planning for it. And it occurs to me in this debate, because we were asked to consider some of the space over at where the French worsted mill used to be across from the middle school for a hefty sum of money. We already now own All Saints, and we were told that it's not a usable space to combine two fire stations, though for the life of me I can't figure out why, because nothing was given to us other than, yeah, the chief says that wouldn't be a good space. Okay, no traffic studies, no directional review, no actual study done. But what does occur to me is the concept of doing a public safety complex. And I go back in time because I'm old and I've been around here for a long time doing this stuff. And it occurs to me when we went to do the middle school and replace it, the first thing we did was not to make a declaration about where we're going to put it. The first thing you do is you contract with somebody who's going to come in and evaluate locations or possible locations that are in the best interest of the city. And then you can evaluate the alternative costs, whether it be because we have to acquire a piece of property that's currently used by someone else, or acquire a vacant piece of property that's available but for a price, or use property that already exists. But to not do a study of alternatives is missing an opportunity to consider what may be in the best interest of the city financially and beneficially in terms of service. We shouldn't do business that way. We should actually study this before we simply agree because somebody said. That's not how government does business. And I know it sounds inefficient, and it's not exactly Mark Zuckerberg style of management, but we're not Facebook. We're not a private company. You can't simply dictate a direction. It requires study. It requires buy-in by people who are involved in making the decision and people who are involved in utilizing the location and the building and the design, and has to be part of a collaborative process, not a, this is what I say, this is what we will do. So I just put that out there. It's going to be an expensive proposition. We should undertake it, but we should do it in the proper fashion. My next item, Cass Park Athletic Field planning and Barry Field future plans. They seem to be linked because the school department or the school committee, in any case, has been saying that once they get the athletic fields properly moved over, they may consider whether or not they would agree to allow a movement in court to release the limitations or the restrictions on the deed. The fact is, that has nothing to do with this council. Asking for council support to move the grocery store forward would require Barry Field deed restrictions removed, something over which we have no jurisdiction and no say. So I'm not sure exactly what the point of that is, but the fact is, serving on the building committee and attending a few meetings, I've come to know that I expect out of 23 acres of space, they will probably use at a minimum 10 acres of that space at the back end, closer to Maury Street, to put a new elementary school, administration building, and possibly their maintenance facility. And so that would make the remaining space either recreational for the school department for that school facility, or they could consider asking for the courts to relieve the deed restriction, but in a fashion that would be to their benefit, I expect. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but this council wouldn't have anything to say about it until the city property was transferred clear title to the city, at which point we would go to sell it, and then we would have some jurisdiction, but that's a ways away. As to the design of the work at Cass Park, that's another one that has been made clear to us that it's my way or the highway. And then the last one is Election Day. I don't know if it was Rex Trailer, Captain Kangaroo, Romper Room, one of those things where they said, you always should say please and thank you. So, on Election Day, please vote. Thank you. All set. Unfinished business.
22059, authorizing the mayor to execute an employment contract by and between Thomas F. Oates III and the city of Woonsocket.
Motion approved.
Motion approved by Councilman Canoyer, seconded by Councilman Gillette. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Canoyer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilman Gillette?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Yes.
Councilman Susie?
Yes.
President Ward.
Yes. And the ordinance is approved, 6-0. New business.
22060, an amendment of Chapter 15 entitled Parks and Recreation of the Code of Ordinances.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Canoyer, seconded by Councilman Gillette.
Sierra.
No, Sierra, I'm sorry.
Wait a minute.
I don't know, I just hear
We
noise
do
at
not
some
sound the
point.
same.
In any case, discussion. Any discussion?
Yes, just for the public.
Canoyer, that is, yes, that is
Yep.
you.
This is just the normal annual ordinance that we update to allow parking in the various city parks during the winter for snowstorms and so forth.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Just a question. Do we do this every year, or is this only because there's an amendment because we took away one parking area?
Every year.
No,
Every year.
yes, no, yes.
Every year.
Every year.
Every year.
Yeah. Why?
I think it was just because it was a trial program and we've kind of continued with it. It's worked good, but I know the first year we just wanted to see how it worked out.
So, is it necessary, or could it be just something that we codify and have just happen by a certain date and end at a certain date?
Yeah, it's good government.
I don't think.
Okay, that's for another time, I guess.
Yeah, I just don't think it's a bad idea to continue it every year. Things change in the parks. Might be some differences. We have a work schedule.
Well, no, I wouldn't mind if we had to do an amendment, as this is. This amends by taking out the Park Place parking area because the property is privately owned now. I'm just saying it in terms of the general policy of affording people this parking, and the process by which they do it stays the same. And the parking locations would stay the same, but if I had to do an amendment because some circumstance changed, we do that all the time. So I just wonder if this is something that that we need, although it does say that it's in the Code of Ordinances. So we're only doing this for an amendment. We don't have to do this every year. I don't know why I didn't just see
I
that.
really don't know if you have to do it every year.
Oh,
I think
but we do for
It's
some
in
reason.
violation of overnight parking in the parks, I believe.
Okay. In any case, thank you very much. Any other discussion? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Canoia?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilman Gillette?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Yes.
Councilman Susie?
Yes.
President Ward?
Yes, and the ordinance passes for the first time.
22061, provide an American Rescue Plan Act funding to secure 10 rooms at the Woonsocket Motor Inn for the period December 3rd, 2022 to April 30th, 2023.
Motion approved.
Motion made by Councilman Canoyer, seconded by Councilman Gillette. Any discussion? Hearing
Council
none,
President?
Count.
Hello?
Oh, Linda,
How are you?
by all means.
So I just want to thank the council again for allocating these funds for this program. The structure will remain the same. Individuals are not giving a voucher from the time period of December 3rd through April 30th. It's renewable every single week, and they need to follow the structure of the program. So I'm sure the criteria will remain the same, and I'm sure my phone is going to start ringing off the hook. So.
Okay. Any other discussion? Just
Council
one-
President.
Mayor.
Thank you. I just want to be clear, last year, Councilman Canoyer and I had gone to negotiate this the first time we did this. We met with the owners, the principals of the Motor Inn, and there was some reluctancy on their part. They didn't know that this would be a good idea. This would be something that they wanted to entertain. Director Plays and I met with the same people to discuss it this time, and in their words, because Director Plays did such a great job managing it, keeping on top of the people that were there, helping them to do more than just have a place to sleep at night, he didn't even hesitate this time and said that he would commit whatever open rooms he has to the use, and it really goes to Director Plays and the way that she managed this whole project. So I wanted to publicly thank her because it's been a real success, and I wouldn't be surprised if other communities that are in our same situation would not want to follow what this council and Director Plays had put together. So thank you.
Council President?
Yes.
I just have one quick question. Director, please, just for my own peace of mind, how do you, I mean, if obviously you want to take care of homeless people no matter where they come from, but with the situation like we have currently, how do you differentiate? Are these Massachusetts homeless people that walk over the border? Are they all Woonsocket people that we're spending our Woonsocket tax
They
dollars?
have to be Woonsocket
How do you
homeless
prove it?
individuals. So they all have to register through the Rhode Island Coordinated Entry System.
Okay.
So it's the portal where everyone that's seeking shelter space must register, and the portal, will identify them as being chronically homeless in Woonsocket.
Okay, thank you.
All set? Any other discussion? If not, thank you for that, and thank you for the good work. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Canoia?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilman Gillette?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Yes.
Councilman Susie?
Yes.
President Ward?
Yes, and the ordinance passes for the first time.
22062, ordinance and amendment of Chapter 2 entitled Administration of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Woonsocket pertaining to tax exemption for the elderly.
Motion approved.
Motion approved by Councilman Canoyer.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Sierra. Discussion.
Council President?
Mayor.
Thank you. So there's several changes that we had been looking at. This began with a discussion with some of my colleagues when I was on the council. We attempted to move some of this, but just didn't get to it. So with the help of Director Chamberlain and in the Finance Department and Lori Perry, who put this data together and put together the The ordinance you see before you, it makes a few significant changes to the elderly exemption. The first being it sets the exemption at a flat $500 annual fee. It also increases the the exemption based on your household income. It now accounts for increase in Social Security raises, because what has happened in the past is we had it set at a static number of $30,000. Then the people would get a raise, which they should be happy about, and they'd lose that $500 exemption. So it was they didn't win. So this now takes into account that increase. It also allows that the amount that people pay in for their Medicare premiums is taken off of their income, so that it's a net less their Medicare premiums. And so this hopefully, and you know, we're still using the 1040H form as a means of proving your financial status, but that the exemption will be hopefully growing. The exemption amount won't be growing, but your allowable income will grow as your Social Security increases. And then the other thing is that we raised that amount from the $30,000 noted on the 1040H to $40,000 to make sure that we capture as many of the local residents who are right at that limit that would otherwise be disqualified. So thank you for your support and consideration. I hope that everyone can support this.
Any other discussion? I have a little bit to say. I'm just going to add my 2 cents here, because I had a really lengthy discussion with the mayor and staff about the various tax credits that we apply. And in fact, as you can see from this ordinance, it changes from a $12,000 exemption on the property taxation to a straight credit. And even though all of our ordinances call for a valuation adjustment, in fact, the tax bills show a tax credit. And when I asked the solicitor about the discrepancy, his only answer was that the state published report called for tax credits, but that's what we report to them, even though it was inconsistent with the actual Code of Ordinances. So if we had applied a $12,000 valuation adjustment to someone qualifying for an elderly exemption, they would not have received $496 worth of tax relief. They would have received something much less. And just to give people a history of this, this actually goes back to 1988, I think it was, when the tax rate was somewhere in the $70 range per thousand. And then the Baldelli administration had to finally implement the tax revaluation. And at that time, the exemption still stated $10,000, it might have been at the time, but it was some dollar amount. And yet, because at that time, with the $70-some tax rate, the credit amount of tax was $490, whatever it is we tax credit. And when the values all changed and the rates dropped into the 30s and 20s, they always kept applying the tax credit, even though it was not complying with our law, whether at the state or local level. And I brought it up, and I noticed that there are also other tax credits that are given that are not codified in our code that we grant, and they're not in state statute. So I'm quite frankly not sure where they come from, but they're applied, even though there's no foundation in our law. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be, but they should be. But we need to codify this stuff. And I think this is a good first step in one area. Whatever the other credits are, we need to amend our code or add to our code to show those credits, show why we're giving them, what the value is. And in this case, it will change that $400 and some to $500 as a round number, and it will apply as a credit appropriately to what we hope to have happen here, and not be affected so much by the valuation changes that take place in revaluation. It also raises the threshold for income and adjusts the income for the reduction for the Medicare supplements premiums. So I support this because it's actually doing what probably should have been done many years ago and wasn't. So we're taking care of this one. There should be others that follow, and I hope the council will support this amendment.
Council President, just to let you know, we attempted to fix all of the exemption. What we found out is that the ones for the handicap, one for veterans, one for
Gold Star parents.
all of that, they're all locked in through General Assembly legislation.
There is legislation.
Yes, so we will be reaching out to our delegation to ask them to, as you see, many other communities have already done it, to increase the amount of either the credit or the assessment reduction. We will be reaching out to see if we can get that on for the next session.
Okay. I'd be interested to know where you found them, because I went looking for them and I didn't find them.
I will get that for you tomorrow.
But yes, it is something that they should, and many other communities have variations on the theme that are expressly designed for their local purpose and are written for them and would take care of cleaning up this issue. But I still think our code of ordinances at some point for those exemptions should just indicate the basic tax credit that's applied and reference the statute that provides for it. Because I think in all questions of taxation, and even this one, you may find before applying this, we may have to submit it to the General Assembly for ratification, because all questions of taxation and credits are subject to General Assembly approval, I believe. And this may have to be included before we can apply it next year. Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Canoia?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilman Gillette?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Yes.
Councilman Susi?
Yes.
President Ward?
Yes, and the ordinance passes for the first time.
22063, renaming Florence Drive as Mayor Susan D. Menard Memorial Drive.
Motion to pass.
Motion approved by Councilman Gillette,
I'll second that.
seconded by Councilman Susi. Discussion. Councilman Gillette.
Thank you. A few years ago, the schools were named after Mayor Menard, and I felt that only half that job was done. So I put in this legislation to have the street changed to Mayor Susan D. Menard Memorial Drive. That, to me, completes what it should be, and the entire area will be dedicated to Mayor Susan D. Menard. And at the same time, the only people that will be affected, at least as far as their papers are concerned, is the school department. It's not going to affect any private citizens. So hopefully my comrades on the City Council will agree with me on this and pass this evening.
Any other discussion?
Council President?
Councilman Canoyer.
Councilman Gillette, is there any significance to the name Florence Drive? What's the history there? Is that named after somebody? Or?
That was textile company that was there. Florence Textile.
Okay.
I used to work there. That's why I know.
Is that it?
That's it for me, yeah. Thank you.
Councilman Gillette, I assume you're going to pay for the extra signage necessary to fit all this on a sign?
I'm sorry, say that again?
You're going to pay for the extra signage to fit all of this on a sign?
As soon as my
Mayor Susan
Social
D.
Security
Menard
tax
Memorial.
increase comes in, I will pay for it.
Thank you for that. Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Canoia?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilman Gillette?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Yes.
Councilman Susi?
Yes.
President Ward?
Yes.
22R144, authorizing the cancellation of certain taxes.
Motion approved.
Motion approved by Councilman Canoyer,
Second.
seconded by Councilwoman Sierra. Discussion, for point of interest, I will point out that this is a group of abatements totaling $27,364.98 for a variety of purposes. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. On the next item, Madam Clerk, before you begin, I am going to be recusing myself because it affects a family member, and so Vice President Sierra will take over, and I will avail myself of this opportunity and leave the dais.
22R145, authorizing the cancellation of certain taxes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Council Vice President? This is,
Any discussion?
yes, Council Vice President, this is an abatement for tangible property for a business at 460 South Main Street for $5,519.73. It was overassessed, and we have a letter from the interim assessor, Ms. Perry, that recommends the abatement.
Roll call, Madam Clerk?
Councilman Canoyer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilman Gillette?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Yes.
Councilman Susie?
Yes.
And the motion passes on, I'm just going to count 1, 2, 5 to 0, on 5 to 0. And please let the record reflect that Councilman Ward, President Ward, recused himself.
22R146, authorizing and empowering the mayor and the director of planning and development to execute an agreement with the town of North Smithfield for professional services, implementing and administrating a home repair program.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Jim.
Anything for discussion? Hearing nothing, roll call, Madam Clerk?
Councilman Canoyer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilman Gillette?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sierra?
Yes.
Councilman Susie?
Yes.
President Ward?
Is this the one?
Town of North Smithfield.
Oh, yes.
And the motion passes on a 6 to 0 vote.
22R147, granting permission to use city property.
Motion to approve?
Motion approved by Councilwoman Gonzalez, seconded by Councilman Canoyer. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Passes 6 to 0. And do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, who did that?
Sierra?
Councilwoman Sierra, seconded by Councilman Canoyer. Any objection? Of course not. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned at 8:28. Thank you all.